What if I told you that the greatest humiliation of your life could become the springboard for your greatest triumph? That sometimes we have to be broken in public to discover a strength we never knew we had. This is the story of Layla, a young woman who proved that true love doesn't just move mountains. It rebuilds entire empires from the rubble of prejudice. Have you ever felt small in a world that seems built for someone else? Ever looked up at gleaming skyscrapers and wondered if you'd ever belong to something that grand? In Dubai, where the impossible is routine and luxury is measured in carats of diamond, Layla cleaned the rooms of the powerful while secretly dreaming of a life that felt as distant as Mars. But here's the truth no one tells you. The most extraordinary stories always begin in the most ordinary places, with people the world has chosen to ignore. What happens when a 28-year-old housekeeper locks eyes with one of the most influential men in the Middle East? When Sheikh Rashid Al Maktoum sees past the simple uniform and recognizes a soul that mirrors his own. Society has strict rules about who may love whom, about where you belong. But the heart doesn't read etiquette manuals. When two people dare to challenge centuries of tradition, what unfolds isn't just a romance. It's a quiet revolution that shakes the foundations of everything we call normal. Get ready for a journey where every page will push you to question your own limits, where you'll learn that courage isn't the absence of fear, but trembling and taking the next step anyway. Layla didn't know it yet, but she was about to learn that sometimes the universe has to break us apart completely to show us what we're really made of. And you, are you ready to discover the hidden strength inside you, waiting for the right moment to emerge? Don't forget to like this video and share your thoughts about this story in the comments. Your interaction is essential so more people can be inspired by this incredible journey. The alarm rang at 4:30 a.m., just as it had every day for the past 6 years. Layla Hassan opened her eyes in the small one-bedroom apartment in Dera, where the scent of spices from nearby shops mingled with the distant call to prayer. At 28, she had become an expert at living two lives. By day, her calloused hands turned the messy rooms of the Burj Al Arab into the flawless spaces millionaire guests expected. By night, those same hands held business administration textbooks at a community college, studying with the quiet determination of someone who knows education is the only ladder out of her station. Between these routines, she sent 60% of her salary to her parents in Pakistan, where her father, Mohammed, worked in a small mechanics shop and her mother, Amina, cared for 3 younger siblings. It was a cruel equation. The more she sacrificed her own dreams, the more she could sustain her family's. In that 40-square-meter apartment, every object told a story of sacrifice. The tiny fridge she'd bought in 18 installments, the plastic table where she ate alone while watching videos on her phone, pretending she didn't miss company, the stack of borrowed library books, her only indulgence. Layla had perfected the almost supernatural ability to be invisible, gliding through the hotel's golden corridors like an efficient ghost, observing a world of baccarat crystal and wines worth more than her monthly salary. She knew the guests' habits better than her own. The Italian countess who always left jewels scattered about, the German businessman who drank only room-temperature Evian, the American socialite who changed outfits 4 times a day. She collected these details automatically, like someone snapping photos without really looking. But there was something she herself didn't see. Behind those seemingly tired brown eyes was a keen mind absorbing every nuance of that gilded universe. Layla wasn't just cleaning rooms. She was studying behaviors, understanding power dynamics, learning business by overhearing phone calls in Arabic, English, and French. It was as if destiny were quietly preparing her for something greater, though she couldn't yet read the signs. During Sunday video calls with her mother, she always repeated the same phrase, "I'm fine, Mama. Things will get better soon." On the pixelated screen, Amina looked at her daughter with the worried love only mothers know, whispering prayers in Urdu for Allah to open doors where only walls seemed to stand. Neither of them imagined that this carefully constructed world of routine and resignation was about to crumble. In a way, neither could predict. It was a Tuesday in March when fate decided Layla had been invisible long enough. The Burj Al Arab was hosting the International Conference on Sustainable Investment, buzzing with diplomats, sheikhs, and business leaders whose decisions moved billions. Layla was on the 18th floor, pushing her cleaning cart down a corridor of Italian marble, when what she later called the moment my life split into before and after occurred. Distracted by the numbers for her financial math project due that night, she didn't see the small puddle left by the gardening team after watering the white orchids. The cart slipped, and the tray of Czech crystals she carried flew into the air like expensive confetti, shattering into 1,000 glittering pieces. The crash echoed through the hall like an announcement that something important was about to happen. That's when she saw him. Sheikh Rashid bin Mohammed Al Maktoum emerged from one of the presidential suites. But instead of the outburst of anger Layla expected, his golden brown eyes filled with genuine concern as he noticed the blood running down her arm, cut by the shards. "You're hurt," he said first, in fluent English touched with a refined British accent from his years at Oxford. At 35, Rashid carried the effortless elegance of generations of nobility. Yet there was something different about him, a kindness that contrasted with the usual arrogance of the powerful. While Layla apologized profusely in English sprinkled with Arabic, trying to gather the pieces with trembling hands, he gently moved her away and called for the hotel doctor. "Crystal can break. People shouldn't," he said. And in that instant, something unexplainable happened. Two pairs of eyes met and recognized something logic couldn't define. Over the next 3 days, something extraordinary unfolded. Rashid, who should have been buried in meetings about solar energy projects worth 50 billion dirhams, found elaborate excuses to appear on the floors Layla cleaned. The first time, he claimed he'd left important documents in Suite 1847. The second, he said he needed to personally inspect accommodations for a visiting Japanese dignitary. On the third day, he simply appeared and asked, "How's your arm?" Their conversation lasted 40 minutes. They spoke about the book she read. He was impressed she'd read The Alchemist in 3 languages, about her business studies, he'd graduated from Harvard, about the cultural differences between Pakistan and the Emirates. It felt as if two souls lost in life's labyrinth had finally found a map back to each other. When he left that afternoon, leaving behind a subtle invitation to continue their talk elsewhere, Layla knew she had crossed an invisible line, one that separated her old life from an unknown and perhaps dangerous new territory. Layla spent the next 5 days fighting her own mind like a boxer facing a mirror. Every time she caught herself smiling at the memory of their conversation, an inner voice, sounding suspiciously like her mother, fired cruel questions. "Do you really think a sheikh would be interested in a housekeeper? How many women like you has he met? This is just the idle curiosity of a bored rich man." She devised military-style strategies to avoid him, memorized his meeting schedule, swapped shifts with Zainab, who was puzzled by this sudden willingness to work the hardest hours, and even used service staircases to avoid the main corridors. It was as though she was fleeing not only him, but a part of herself that had awakened after years of hibernation. In her business classes, Professor Samira noticed her distraction. "Layla, you always participate so enthusiastically. Today it's like your mind is on Mars." If only she knew Layla was trying not to think about golden eyes that seemed to have memorized every detail of her face. Things grew more complicated when Rashid began leaving quiet signs of his presence like a romantic detective. First, a white rose in her locker, accompanied by a note in elegant Arabic script. "Beauty lies not only in what we see, but in what we feel." Layla tossed the flower away without reading the note, but her hands trembled for an hour. The next day, it was an English copy of Rumi's poetry, with a few verses underlined. "Let yourself be silently drawn by the strange pull of what you really love. It will not lead you astray." This time, she donated the book to the hotel library, but not before secretly photographing the marked page. The third gift was devastating in its simplicity. A small succulent plant with a card that read only, "For someone who thrives anywhere." Layla broke. She sat in the staff bathroom and cried for 20 minutes, not from sadness, but from the pure terror of falling for someone who lived on a completely different planet. That night, she called Amina in a state of controlled panic. "Mama, what would you do if someone impossible was interested in you?" Her mother, with the intuitive wisdom of decades spent healing emotional wounds, replied, "My daughter, impossible is a word we invented when we're afraid of happiness. But we also invent fear when we need to protect ourselves. Only you know which one you're feeling." After hanging up, Layla lay staring at the apartment ceiling for hours, counting the cracks in the peeling paint. 47 cracks. Like 47 reasons this couldn't work. She'd read about Icarus syndrome in college. People who sabotage their own chances of success because they fear flying too high and getting burned by the sun. Was that what she was doing? Or was her intuition right to scream danger in capital letters? The answer would come sooner than she imagined, through someone who knew both the risks and the rewards of loving beyond one's circumstances. Fatima al-Zahra had seen everything in her 30 years as head housekeeper at the Burj Al Arab. Secret weddings arranged to hide scandals, fortunes lost on bets during business conferences, and impossible loves that bloomed in the hotel's golden corridors like desert flowers. Beautiful, rare, and almost always doomed to wither under the weight of social convention. At 58, she carried the kind of wisdom that comes from watching human nature at its most vulnerable, when people believe no one is looking. So when she noticed Layla avoiding certain floors as if they were minefields, and Sheikh Rashid turning up with ever less convincing excuses, she knew exactly what was happening. On Thursday night, after the last guest had retired and the hallways finally grew quiet, Fatima invited Layla for tea in the small staff lounge. "Habibti," she said, using the affectionate Arabic word for "my dear. You're carrying a burden too heavy for your shoulders alone." The story Fatima shared that evening changed everything. 40 years earlier, she had been a young receptionist at a smaller hotel when she met Khalil, a married diplomat who fell in love with her with the intensity of someone finding an oasis in the desert. "He was everything I shouldn't want," Fatima recalled, her eyes glinting with memories time had never erased. Married, powerful, from a traditional family that would never accept me. But love, ya Layla, love doesn't ask permission to enter your heart. They met in secret for 2 years, building a private world of deep conversations, shared dreams, and the certainty that they'd found their soulmates. But when his family discovered the affair, the pressure was relentless. Khalil had to choose between love and social standing, and chose the safety of the known. "He asked me to wait, said he'd find a way. I waited 5 years and until he died in a car accident. 5 years of my life lost, waiting for courage that never came." "But Sheikh Rashid," Fatima continued, refilling their cups with hands that trembled slightly. "He's not like the other men of the elite. I've watched him for 10 years, ever since he joined the family council. He builds hospitals for the poor, funds schools in neighborhoods others don't even know exist, greets every employee by name. Do you think that's common among the powerful?" She told Layla how Rashid had quietly helped many hotel staff, paying for a housekeeper's father's surgery, funding a security guard's children's education, once even firing a manager who mistreated immigrant workers. "His heart is different, Layla. And you," Fatima paused, studying the young woman's face, "you're not like the others either. I've seen you studying during breaks, sending money home when you barely have enough yourself. You both have something rare, nobility of character." When Layla protested that someone like him could never truly be interested in her, Fatima gripped her hands firmly. "Habibti, I've lived 40 years with the regret of not being brave. Please don't make the same mistake. Sometimes the universe conspires in our favor, but we have to take the first step of faith." The invitation arrived through Hassan, Rashid's discreet driver, who appeared at the hotel entrance Friday night wearing a conspiratorial smile. "The Sheikh would like to know if you'd care to have coffee tomorrow at 4 p.m., a private place, away from curious eyes." Layla spent the entire night choosing clothes as if it were a matter of life and death, which, in a way, it was. Her wardrobe was mostly work uniforms and a few simple pieces for class, but she managed an outfit with a navy blouse that brought out her eyes and black slacks she'd bought for school presentations. Looking in the mirror for the 10th time, she whispered a prayer in Urdu her grandmother had taught her. Allah, if this path is right, make it easy. If it's wrong, make it impossible. At 3:45 p.m., Saturday, she stood outside Café Batil in Jumeirah, her heart pounding as if she were about to give a lecture to the entire university. She hadn't expected how natural it would all feel. Rashid had chosen a table in the back, away from windows, where they could talk without interruption or scrutiny. He rose when she arrived, a gesture of courtesy that made her feel like a princess despite her thrift store outfit. "You came," he said, and there was genuine relief in his voice, as though he too had doubted this meeting would happen. During the next 2 hours, they discovered an almost supernatural connection, a shared love of Mahmoud Darwish's poetry, a mutual concern over rising social inequality in the Arab world, dreams of projects that could truly improve ordinary people's lives. Rashid spoke of his frustration with family expectations, arranged marriages, traditions that felt outdated, the constant pressure to maintain a flawless public image. Layla talked about her hopes of starting a consulting firm for small businesses, the ache of missing her family, the loneliness of being invisible in a world where everyone else seemed to have a defined place. By the time the Dubai sky turned shades of rose and gold, they realized 4 hours had passed in the ease of old friends reunited. "Can I confess something?" Rashid asked, nervously turning his cup of Arabic coffee. "For the past 10 days, you've been the first thought when I wake and the last before I sleep. This shouldn't be happening, but..." Layla felt the world spin. It was real, not idle curiosity or disguised charity. He felt the same unexplainable connection that made her question everything she believed about destiny and impossibility. "I know we're from different worlds," he continued, "but could we explore this friendship and see where it leads?" When she nodded, yes, tears stinging her eyes for reasons she couldn't name, she knew she'd crossed the Rubicon of her life. There was no going back. She was officially in love with someone who could break her heart in ways she couldn't imagine, but who might also open doors she'd only ever seen in dreams. The next 2 months turned Layla's life into an emotional roller coaster worthy of Dubai's wildest theme parks. Their secret meetings multiplied, coffee dates in distant neighborhoods, walks through the old souks where Western tourists blended with locals, and they could disappear in the crowd, dinners in small Dera restaurants where no one would expect to see a member of the royal family. Each meeting was a discovery. Rashid quoted passages from 100 Years of Solitude in Arabic. Layla recited verses of Faiz Ahmed Faiz in Urdu. They debated social policies with the passion of two idealists who had finally found someone sharing their dream of change. But keeping the relationship hidden was like balancing on a tightrope in a hurricane. At the hotel, Layla had to feign complete indifference whenever Rashid appeared for official meetings, perfecting a poker face that would impress professional players. Co-workers began noticing subtle changes. She smiled more, hummed while working, carried a new lightness in her step. "You're different," observed Zainab, her closest colleague. "It's like someone turned a light on inside you." This double life brought unexpected allies and dangerous enemies. Hassan became their unofficial accomplice, crafting elaborate routes and creative excuses for Rashid's outings. 20 years driving for this family," he confided to Layla, "and I've never seen the Sheikh so human. You've brought back something in him I thought was gone." Amira Khalil, a young progressive journalist covering social issues in the Emirates, became Layla's confidant after a chance meeting at the cafe they frequented. "You're living the story we all secretly dream of," Amira said with a conspiratorial smile, "but also the nightmare we all fear." She warned Layla of the danger in loving royalty. The Al Maktoum family didn't get where they are by being kind to anyone who threatens their traditions. On the other side, powerful enemies stirred. Sheikha Mariam bint Rashid, Rashid's cousin and childhood fiancée, hired private investigators after noticing changes in his behavior. He's canceled 3 family dinners this month, she complained to her uncle. Something's happening, and I'll find out what. Social media became a minefield. Blurry photos of Rashid with a mystery woman began circulating in private elite groups, fueling wild speculation. Layla learned to slip in and out of places through service doors, to wear sunglasses and scarves, to move through the city like a spy on a covert mission. Every phone buzz made her jump. Was it a compromising photo? A tip-off? Paranoia became her constant companion. In her business classes, she could hardly concentrate, imagining catastrophic scenarios. Being discovered and deported, or worse. Rashid being forced by his family to cut her off. Love is supposed to be simple, she told Amira during one of their weekly meetups. It shouldn't feel like a military operation. The journalist's reply was prophetic. Habibti, when you challenge centuries of tradition, simplicity is a luxury you can't afford. The question is it worth the fight? Layla didn't yet know that she was about to be tested in ways she could never have imagined, and that the answer to that question would define not only her future with Rashid, but also who she truly was. The night that changed everything unfolded beneath a star-filled sky in the Al-Mahad Desert, far from Dubai's artificial lights and society's prying eyes. Rashid had planned every detail with the precision of a diplomatic summit. An authentic Bedouin camp, complete with Persian carpets, silk cushions, and lanterns swaying in the desert breeze. "I want to show you my true Dubai," he said, helping her down from the modified jeep Hassan had driven along trails that seemed to exist only in ancestral memory. Not the Dubai of skyscrapers and malls, but the Dubai of my grandparents, where the stars were our only towers and silence was our favorite music. Layla had never experienced such complete stillness. It was as if the entire universe had paused to hear her heartbeat. There, free of the city's distractions, they finally surrendered to the vulnerability they had avoided for months, not just physically, but emotionally, like two souls finding the courage to reveal their deepest wounds. Rashid spoke of the suffocating loneliness of being treated as a symbol instead of a person. "Do you know when was the last time someone questioned me, challenged me, made me think differently?" he asked, tracing invisible patterns in the sand with his fingers. "Until I met you, I was drowning in empty approvals and automatic reverence. My family, my advisors, even my friends, they all tell me what they think I want to hear." He confessed he had considered renouncing his titles and responsibilities more than once, feeling more like a gilded prisoner than a respected leader. Layla, in turn, revealed wounds she hadn't known she carried. The constant weight of supporting her entire family, the guilt of wanting more when others had so little, the quiet shame of feeling invisible in a world that seemed made for someone else. "Sometimes I wake in the night afraid that my whole life will just be this, cleaning up after others live," she admitted, tears shining like diamonds under the starlight. "And I feel terrible for wanting more, because I know millions would give anything for what I have." When they finally kissed beneath the Milky Way stretched above them like a veil embroidered with ancient light, it wasn't just passion, it was recognition, as if two pieces of a cosmic puzzle had finally found their rightful place. "I love you," Rashid whispered against her lips, the words heavy with a certainty that startled him. "And it's not despite our differences, it's because of them. You make me want to be a better man, not a better Sheikh." Layla answered with a kiss as intense as the moment of finally stopping the flight from herself. That night, under the protective cloak of the ancestral desert, they made plans that seemed impossible in the harsh daylight of urban reality. Rashid would use his position to implement real social reforms, starting with labor laws to protect people like Layla. She would finish her business degree and help him create microcredit programs for immigrant women entrepreneurs. Together, they would build a bridge between their two worlds, proving that true love doesn't just move mountains, it can rebuild entire societies. It was a daring, beautiful dream, and heartbreakingly naive about what awaited them next. The storm arrived disguised as a charity gala, the Middle East Orphans Benefit at Atlantis, The Palm gathered the cream of Emirati society for a night meant to celebrate generosity and compassion. Layla had no business being there, but Sheikh Mariam had orchestrated every detail of the trap with a surgeon's precision and a Roman gladiator's cruelty. Through a third-party agency, Layla was hired to work the event as a server, unaware she was being led straight into a social slaughterhouse. Dressed in the black and white uniform of the waitstaff, she moved among tables adorned with orchids that cost more than her monthly pay, pouring Dom Perignon for people who spent in a single evening what she made in a year. Rashid was there, of course, seated at the head table with members of the royal family and international diplomats, oblivious that the woman he loved was just a few yards away, camouflaged among the invisible workers propping up that gilded world. The irony was vicious. She was literally serving the world she dreamed of belonging to. The execution was theatrically perfect. At 10:30 p.m., with guests softened by alcohol and lively conversation, Sheikh Mariam took the stage for a special thank you. "Ladies and gentlemen," her voice rang through the hall, "tonight we celebrate generosity, but we must also talk about authenticity." She paused, scanning the room until her gaze found Layla, who froze like a gazelle realizing it had wandered into a predator's sights. It's interesting how some people infiltrate our most exclusive events. Take, for example, that young woman there. A ruthless spotlight flooded Layla, who stood paralyzed, balancing a tray of crystal flutes. She is not merely a server hired for the evening. She's Layla Hassan, a housekeeper at the Burj Al Arab, who has apparently developed some very specific social ambitions. The entire ballroom turned toward her, 500 pairs of eyes dissecting every inch of her. The silence roared, broken only by the nervous clink of expensive jewelry as women shifted in their seats, savoring the drama about to unfold. "They say she's been trying to seduce certain members of our community," Mariam continued with a smile that might have been beautiful if it weren't so poisonous. "It's fascinating how some people mistake temporary kindness for genuine interest, like a modern Cinderella who forgot that midnight always comes and that crystal slippers don't turn housekeepers into princesses." The laughter began as a low, malicious ripple and swelled into a wave of humiliation that crashed over Layla like a social tsunami. Someone shouted "opportunist" from the back. Phones were drawn like weapons, recording every second of her public degradation. Rashid pushed back from the table, his face marble white, then hesitated. A fatal hesitation, only 3 seconds long, but to Layla it stretched into an eternity of rejection. By the time he tried to reach her, it was too late. Layla let the tray fall, the shattering crystal rang out like a farewell, and ran for the exit, chased by camera flashes and cruel laughter that would haunt her feeds for months. The last thing she saw before slipping out the doors were Rashid's eyes, not angry, not disgusted, but something worse, pity. And in that moment she knew she'd lost not only the love of her life, but the last crumb of dignity she had left. The 3 months after her public humiliation were the darkest of Layla's life. Fired on the spot from the Burj Al Arab, she became persona non grata at every luxury hotel in Dubai. The story spread like wildfire in the desert, and no one wanted to hire the housekeeper who tried to seduce a sheikh. Videos from the gala circulated for weeks online, trailed by cruel comments in Arabic and English. She barely left her apartment, surviving on instant noodles and tears, while her mother called from Pakistan, worried about how thin she looked on video. Amira pulled her out of the deepest part of the well. "Habibti, you have 2 choices. Let this story define you, or rewrite it." Maya Angelou once said, "You may not control all the events that happen to you, but you can decide not to be reduced by them. The question is, are you going to let them win?" It was exactly the jolt Layla needed. That night, she looked in the mirror and made a promise. She would never let her story end with her as the weeping victim of an unjust system. The transformation began with a bold plan born of anger and fueled by resolve. Using 6 years of savings, her emergency fund, and a student loan secured through her university, Layla founded Karama Cleaning Services. Karama means dignity in Arabic. It wouldn't be just another cleaning company. It would be a quiet revolution in the treatment of immigrant domestic workers. Every employee would earn fair wages, receive health coverage, guaranteed days off, and, most importantly, training in labor rights so they would never be exploited like so many others. The first client came via a Facebook ad, an American expat family impressed by the promise of cleaning with a social conscience. Others followed, especially Europeans and Americans uneasy with local labor practices. Layla worked 16-hour days, cleaning homes herself in the mornings, running the business in the afternoons, studying digital marketing and human rights at night. Every home cleaned was a declaration. She wasn't merely a survivor, she was an entrepreneur determined to change the system from the inside. 6 months later, something extraordinary happened. A CNN investigative journalist learned her story through Amira and produced a feature on labor conditions in the Emirates, using Layla as an example of resilience and social entrepreneurship. From shamed Cinderella to inspiring CEO, how a former housekeeper is changing Dubai. The headline went viral worldwide. Speaking invitations poured in. Universities wanted her take on social entrepreneurship. International organizations asked about labor rights. Women's conferences sought her story of overcoming adversity. Her company grew to 50 employees in 8 months, each treated with the dignity she had once been denied. Karima's Instagram jumped from 0 to 200,000 followers, not for past drama, but for inspiring content on women's empowerment and social justice. Layla had transformed from viral victim to respected changemaker, proving that the greatest falls can be cleverly disguised springboards. Meanwhile, Rashid watched from afar through anonymous accounts, impressed and remorseful, realizing he had lost not only an extraordinary woman, but a partner who might have changed the world by his side, if only he'd had the courage to defend her when it mattered most. Hassan appeared at Karama's office one October morning, 6 months after the night that split Layla's life into before and after. The loyal driver carried the weight of months watching Sheikh Rashid fade into a shadow of himself, canceling social engagements, staring into nothing, rejecting the family's proposed matches. "Madam Layla," Hassan said respectfully, the honorific he reserved for women he admired, "I need to tell you what happened that night." The truth he revealed was devastating. Rashid hadn't hesitated out of shame or cowardice, but from pure shock. In those fatal 3 seconds, he was processing the elaborate trap, the family's betrayal, and the calculated cruelty of the attack. By the time he reacted and ran after her, Layla had vanished into Dubai's chaotic traffic. "He spent 2 weeks looking for you," Hassan said. "He checked every hotel, every job agency, every place he imagined you might be working. When he learned you'd been fired and were being hounded by paparazzi, he nearly went mad with guilt." Rashid's redemption began with painful decisions that cost him dearly within his family. First, he publicly broke off his engagement to Sheikh Mariam, triggering a scandal that rippled through Emirati society. "I can't marry someone capable of destroying an innocent person out of jealousy," he declared in a tense family meeting Hassan overheard from the hallway. The family was furious, not only over the broken tradition, but the clear implication that he had chosen a housekeeper over a noble-blooded cousin. Then came tangible changes. Rashid used his influence on the municipal council to pass new labor protections for immigrant domestic workers, quietly invested in the human rights organizations Layla supported, and began funding microcredit programs for women entrepreneurs. These weren't performative gestures to win her back. They were the real transformations of a man who finally understood that privilege without social responsibility is just parasitism dressed as nobility. Yet he still hadn't found the courage to face her. The inevitable meeting came on a rainy Tuesday at Karama's Business Bay office. Rashid arrived unannounced, without a driver, in a modest Toyota Hassan had lent him to avoid attention. Layla was no longer the timid, vulnerable woman he'd known. She sat behind a glass desk in a navy blazer that radiated authority, walking 2 new employees through contracts in fluent English, punctuated by legal terms she'd learned out of necessity. When she saw him at the door, she didn't tremble, didn't smile, didn't flare with anger. She simply studied him with the calm of someone who had mastered her emotions. "Sheikh Rashid," she said formally, dismissing her staff with a subtle gesture. "I wasn't expecting you." Then came the words that set the tone for everything to follow. "You met me when I was just a shadow of who I could be. Now I am exactly who I chose to become." It was a declaration of emotional independence, a gentle but firm warning that she was no longer the housekeeper dazzled by his attention, but a CEO who had built her own enterprise from the rubble of public humiliation. Rashid understood instantly that earning her forgiveness would be harder than any diplomatic negotiation he'd ever faced. The call came at 3 a.m. on a Thursday in December, tearing through the apartment's silence like a siren. It was Faraz, Layla's youngest brother, his voice choked with panic. "Layla, Appa, Mama's in the hospital. The doctors say she needs immediate heart surgery." But the pause said everything. The family had no money for a procedure that would cost the equivalent of 50,000 US dollars. Layla felt the world collapse around her. Despite Karama's success, most revenue was reinvested in growth, and her personal savings, though now substantial, didn't cover even half. For 3 desperate days, she tried everything: bank loans, denied for lack of collateral, online crowdfunding raising only 15%, even selling company equipment. Nothing was enough. She went 72 sleepless hours making frantic calls to cheaper hospitals, charities, anyone who might help. That's when Rashid appeared at the hospital where she'd set up an improvised vigil in the corridor, waiting for news that might never come. "Layla." His voice was soft, careful, like someone approaching a wounded animal. "Hassan told me about your mother." She couldn't pretend to be cold. She was too exhausted, too vulnerable, too desperate to keep her guard up. "I didn't come to offer charity," he continued, settling into the plastic chair beside her in that corridor that smelled of disinfectant and despair. "I came to do what I'd do for anyone I love, and I never stopped loving you, even though I lost the right to say it." Before she could protest or ask why he was there, he went on. "I've already spoken to Dr. Ahmed Zayed, the best cardiologist in the Emirates. He flies to Karachi tomorrow with a full team. All costs are covered, and your mother will get the best care possible. This isn't a favor and it isn't manipulation. It's the least I can do for the woman who raised the most extraordinary person I've ever met." The tears came without warning, months of unbreakable strength finally giving way to exhaustion and relief. "Why?" was all she could whisper. "Because when you truly love someone, there's no limit to what you do to protect the people they love most." The hospital vigil became the stage for the most honest conversation they had ever had. For 12 hours, while they waited on a 7-hour surgery, they spoke about everything left unsaid on that terrible night. Rashid confessed his cowardice, without excuses, taking full responsibility. "I failed you when you needed me most. I can't undo that, but I can spend the rest of my life trying to make it right." Layla spoke of the pain, how his hesitation had hurt worse than the public humiliation. "I could face their hatred. I couldn't face the idea that you were ashamed of me." When she finally let him hold her hand for the first time in 8 months, it felt like a dam breaking. "I was never ashamed of you," he whispered, kissing her hands as if they were sacred relics. "I was ashamed of myself, of my family, of a world we built on the backs of people like you." When the surgeon stepped out with a tired smile to say that Amina had come through and would recover fully, they embraced with the fierce relief of those who had nearly lost everything twice. First each other, then the hope that love could truly overcome any obstacle. 2 years and 3 months after the night that nearly destroyed their lives, Layla Hassan and Sheikh Rashid Al Maktoum were married in a ceremony remembered as the wedding that changed Dubai. It wasn't just a union. It was a revolutionary statement that echoed across the Middle East. The celebration unfolded in 2 parts, breaking every imaginable tradition. The first at Al-Qasr, attended by royalty and international dignitaries, where Layla wore a white Ali Saab gown embroidered with scenes honoring Arab warrior women. The second at the Sonapur Community Center, where she had grown spiritually during her months of rebuilding, attended by hundreds of immigrant workers, domestic employees, and their families who traveled from Pakistan, Bangladesh, the Philippines, and Sri Lanka to witness the impossible fairy tale made real. When Amina Hassan, fully recovered from heart surgery, blessed her daughter's marriage in Urdu, while Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid, Rashid's uncle and the ruler of Dubai, did the same in Arabic, there wasn't a dry eye at either ceremony. International media covered the event as a symbol of social change in the Emirates. Karama cleaning services had become far more than Layla ever dreamed in those first months of desperation and grit. Headquartered in Dubai with branches in Abu Dhabi, Sharjah, and Doha, the company employed more than 300 immigrant women, all receiving fair wages, full benefits, and, most importantly, daily dignity in how they were treated. But the real impact lay in the side initiatives she and Rashid built together. The Karama Micro Credit Center offered interest-free loans to women entrepreneurs from immigrant communities. The Women's Empowerment School taught everything from basic literacy to advanced technical courses. And the Cultural Bridges program connected Emirati families with immigrant workers through exchanges that humanized relationships, once based solely on economic hierarchy. Rashid used his role within the royal family to completely reshape labor laws in the Emirates, creating the Gulf's most advanced protection system. Together, they proved that true love doesn't just move mountains, it rebuilds entire societies, brick by brick, heart by heart. The true elixir Layla brought back to the world wasn't just her personal story of triumph, but living proof that human dignity recognizes no passport, social class, or bank account. Whether speaking at Harvard or Oxford, the United Nations, or the World Economic Forum, always with Rashid in the audience, applauding with the pride of a man who discovered his real purpose was to amplify voices worthy of being heard. Her message never changed. Never let anyone make you feel small. You may not control where you come from, but you always get to choose where you're going. And when you get there, reach back and help those still climbing. Her Instagram, once a marketing tool for Karama, became a daily source of inspiration for millions of women worldwide, not because she peddled shallow optimism, but because she shared real vulnerability, honest defeats, and victories earned with sweat and tears. In interviews, she always closed with the same line: "My story isn't special because I found a prince. It's special because I discovered I was the queen I'd been looking for." And when young immigrant women approached her at public events, whispering that they felt invisible and worthless, she cupped their faces in the calloused hands that once cleaned hotel rooms and said, with the authority of someone who'd walked that road, "Habibi, you were not born to be small. The universe is waiting to see what you came here to do."